Hello, welcome back. Today, I guess we're going to talk about what I've learned about cycling a tank with a sump, because it's sort of a new experience to me, and just a little background on where I'm coming from, I guess. When I was young, like child young, uh, I had family friends who owned a pet shop, and so I got to uh, learn and experience pretty much everything about how tanks worked 35 years ago, 40 years ago. And I had lots of tanks. Had tank bug when I was young. I had access to all kinds of fish tanks, and I've had all flavors of fish. And I did it all when I was really young, and then life was busy, and now I'm back with a 90-gallon tank. Things changed a lot since then, because back then your setup would have been a tank that looks like this with an under gravel filter, and if you were really keen on filtration, you also had a hang on back filter with your under gravel filter, and that was pretty much it. You might have gone with an under gravel filter and one of those inside box filters. In a tank like this, you would have stuck one of those, maybe two of them, one in each corner, and tried to get away with that. Um, so it was pretty primitive in that regard. In a way, if you think about how it all works, the under gravel filter was kind of like a mini sump. It was like a really skinny mini sump, and it was giving you a sump-like advantage. And I don't even know if they understood the whole bacterial relationship. I didn't remember anyone back then, talking about the nitrogen cycle and ammonia. No one ever talked about that. What we said was, you know, uh, we talked about the water and the minerals in the water and the evaporation and mineralization building up, and thus you needed to do water changes. Back then, we recommended a weekly water change, and that again, it depended on your fish load, and you had to figure that out on your own. Some people would do 20%, some people would do 50%, and in that sense, it's still the same argument today. Everybody does the water change that they learn that they need to do, and that's through this cycling process with a sump. That's what I'm going to talk about, is where I'm at with the whole water changing thing, and how it's been from the beginning to now. Um, how often did I have to do my water changes, and so on. So, and what complications was I dealing with? So, day one, filled the tank up, and it's full of water, no fish, water and gravel, a couple decorations, and a light. And of course, all the glasses full of bubbles. And I dechlorinated my water, and I tested it, and it was like 0.25 ammonia, a little, light shade of green on the API master test kit. Okay, no problem, just set it up. Day two, day three, I got the bacterial bloom cloud deal going on. That went on for several days. It took quite a while actually for that to clear up. Uh, Probably maybe 4 or 5 days into it, I put in these two floating bed uh, filters, and each one of those is meant to handle the bacterial load of a 40-gallon aquarium. I don't know if it's true, but that's how they advertise them. And either way, at best, if it is true, those two things are supposed to be able to handle bacterial load of 80 gallons, and my tank would be 90 gallons, and of course my sump has another 35 gallons in it. So they're just a helping hand. Uh, uh, they took a couple weeks, I think, for them to set themselves up. I don't think they were benefiting me for a while, but I put them there. It takes a while for the bacteria to grow on that plastic stuff. It's hard for it to bond, so it takes, you got to give those things at least 2 weeks, and I do believe they help. I really do. So anyway, that cloudy sort of water look, bacterial bloom thing, is that basically new tank syndrome, I think they call it, or something along that line. And yeah, I definitely was dealing with the whole new tank syndrome thing. I could not get anything better than a 0.25 ammonia score in the beginning. I waited. There was nothing in the tank to sort of. I was adding bottled bacteria, but it was just not populating, I guess, very quickly. It's just a process. It takes time. How much time? I'd say a tank around this size, you need 6 to 8 weeks before it even begins to actually cycle. Now, I thought I had cycled because I let it go, and it was almost yellow with a little bit of green. And I'm like, okay, it's doing it. And so I went and bought, just like 4 fish, threw them in. Ammonia spiked. So, like, if you think you can cycle the tank when it's empty and put fish in, it's not how it's going to work. You got to put the fish in, it'll spike. And then you have to do water changes because it's spiking. And I was doing initially, after adding just a few fish, and they're all still alive today. It's the first ones that went in were the blue skirted tetra and the white skirted tetra, and then I followed them up because I didn't have enough of them with the black skirted tetra like a day later. And the black skirted tetra were like fry sized. They were little babies. You can check back on the videos to see those, how small they were. And so I tried to not do a fish in cycle, but I guess I technically did a fish in cycle. But I was monitoring my levels and doing water changes to keep them low. 0.25 ammonia is, like, any ammonia is not good, but 0.25 isn't harmful as long as you don't get any higher than that. I suppose over the long term it would be harmful, but they're doing pretty good, so I don't know. I don't think I did anything cruel to my fish. I never saw their gills turning red. So that was my experience. So some people just think if you're not completely cycled for 8 weeks and you put a few fish in, that you're an evil, bad person. I admire how much those individuals care for animals. I just don't feel that I harmed any animal doing what I did, and I believe that I did my best to act in their best interest by doing constant water changes. I was doing 20% water changes initially, sometimes twice a day, so 40 total, but I wouldn't do it all at once because massive water changes can harm your fish too, especially in a tank that's not stabilized, and even in a stabilized tank, because your water parameters out of the tap could be so far off of the water parameters that settle out in your tank, and you do an 80% water change, and if you got delicate young discus like I do, that's enough to start killing fish. Stress kills fish. Stress brings on disease. Stress makes bad stuff happen. So as time went on, I was able to reduce my 20% changes to 10% changes, sometimes once, sometimes twice a day. And again, if I had to do this to A, keep the fish healthy, and B, get my nitrogen cycle going properly. One of the complications I was dealing with, and I guess the video is getting a bit long, but it's not too bad. One of the major complications I was dealing with in trying to get my cycle established is that my city puts chloramine in tap water. There's chlorine, which is not as bad, as chloramine, which is bad. And the reason it's bad is because they bond a molecule of ammonia with the chlorine molecule, and that makes the chlorine molecule last longer, so it doesn't dissipate out of the water like at all on its own. So that's the first part about how chloramine is bad. The second part about it is when you put your treatment, your dechlorinator in the water, which does work on chloramine, it breaks that bond between the chlorine and the ammonia. So I'm sitting there racking my brain as to where's all this ammonia coming from? The tank hasn't had a chance to really get dirty, and well, that's where it was coming from. It was coming right out of my tap water. So, and because I have to deal with that in my tap water, you really have to work on building up your bacteria. And that's why adding this was probably a great idea, because I have that extra load. Now, again, very soon, there's a bunch of plants coming in the middle. That's going to help me process some of what, at the end of the nitrogen cycle, you get the ammonia, nitrites, and then nitrates at the end. So you want zero ammonia, zero nitrites, and you'll probably always see just a little hint of nitrates, but very low. And when you put the plants in, that very small amount of nitrates can actually be absorbed by the plants, and you can extend your water change cycle. So as it stands, with just 4 plants in my tank, I've got like 34 small fish. They're not large fish yet. The discus will be large, but they're all relatively small fish. And I got 34 fish, 4 plants, and I let my water go for 2 weeks. And then I did my tests. I was zero ammonia, zero nitrites, and my nitrates, after that much time, they were just starting to look orange. Like, it's, low nitrates is yellow, and it blends into orange. And as you starting to look red, that's when you're in trouble. That's when your fish are getting hurt. You don't want to be red. But if you're yellow looking a little orange, I mean, it's time to start thinking about it, but you haven't hurt anybody yet. It's not a damaging level from what I understand. So anyway, after 2 weeks, that's where I was, and I did a 10% water change. Boom, back down to practically nothing. And this is what she looks like. So I could probably do a 10% water change every 2 weeks, but I do get quite a bit of evaporation. So we're back to the old-fashioned evaporation increases the mineralization in the water problem, and that is still true today. That hasn't changed. So I've concluded that this tank will require a 10% water change once a week, and that should probably keep me going for 6 to 8 months before I need to do something like a 50% water change. That's what I'm guessing. I will be keeping an eye on it, but I feel that's where it's at. And so starting a big tank, definitely more complicated than conditioning a small tank. But once you condition the large quantity of water and you have the bacterial load to cope with everything, a large tank is easier to keep on autopilot for a longer period of time. A 10% water change once a week for months on end is nothing. That's 15-20 minutes of maintenance tops. And then on top of that, it's like, what? Oh, clean the algae off my glass and have a nice day. Uh, yeah, no, it's great. I'm definitely, definitely enjoying the hobby again. And stay tuned because there's more plants and more fish coming soon. I can definitely, definitely, definitely stock this tank fairly thick, I think, based on what I've been seeing so far. And I am going to. And it is going to be glorious. Have a wonderful day, folks.